Welcome to Wild Country Daily Updates. This is part 2 of the recording. I didn't want to make the video too long because I know how people have a hard time with their attention span, so I wanted to shorten it up. So, the description. The Conestoga Susquehannock people are a I don't know how to pronounce that word.
Eurascoian.
Speaking tribe, indigenous, which you know what that means. I butcher words and I'm sorry. To the Susquehanna River Valley and its tributaries, which encompasses parts of present-day Pennsylvania, New York, and Maryland, according to tribal historian Michael Mantooth. Our oral history and the historical records support that we started in New York and we actually traveled down the Susquehanna River. So periodically, through time, as you track our people and where our villages were located, we move up and down the Susquehanna River throughout, the seasons and throughout the years, and when a particular site would become depleted or unsafe, we would move to the opposite side of the river, or further north or further south. Present day, there are under 100 members remaining of the Conestoga Susquehannock people today. According to Mantooth, most of the tribe are over 70 years old. So it puts us in a situation where it's now or never in terms of recognition of our treaty guaranteed land in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. It's interesting that today there's a prevailing myth of our extinction, despite 175 plus years of documented history of asking, but specifically and consistently identifying as today we're really in a push. We're reaching out to politicians. We trying to rebuild those relationships, to try to preserve our history, because it's like every major source still lists us as extinct despite all of this documentation. Listen to the podcast to hear more about the tribe, how colonization impacted the tribe, and the 5 common myths about Native Americans that Mantooth addressed. So now this is part 2.
Because I don't know if you've ever been there, but it is a really powerful experience, at least for me, to see like the scale of it, and also to think about the historical significance of it, how long, our people have been traveling up and down that river.
Were there any family lines who descend from the students at the Carlisle Indian Industrial School?
Yes. And we're always very intentional when we talk about boarding school survivors. And I think it's very important to say it in this specific way, which is that ancestors of current tribal members were at Carlisle Indian Industrial School. Currently, we have 2 families that would be descendants of Elias Scannendorf, who I believe was there in 1907. He descends from John Scannendoah, who was a known Conestoga Susquehannock, and some of Elias Scannendorf's descendants identify as Conestoga Susquehannock to this day. And the second person is Miss Lulu Coates, who was there, I think, in 1905. She was also recorded on the census in Maryland for a period of time, and some of her descendants are also identify as Conestoga Susquehannock today. And it's important to talk about it that way because, a large contingent of our tribe survived by migrating and integrating with other tribes, particularly the Oneida and the Cayuga. So, when you look at their Carlisle school records, they're designated as Oneida people. And I think it is very important to acknowledge that because some of their descendants are enrolled among us. That's true. But some of their descendants are also enrolled Oneida and also enrolled in other Haudenosaunee nations. So, I don't want it to be misconstrued or to have this idea that those descendants or those students at Carlisle belong to us because realistically, they're part of a large community of Native Americans who, particularly among the Haudenosaunee nations, often have connections to many different tribes.
What are 5 common myths about Native Americans that you would like to address?
Well, there's tons of myths, but I think one of the biggest myths that desperately needs to be addressed in the state of Pennsylvania or Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is that there are no documented natives in Pennsylvania. And I think that myth has been used to allow people to justify identifying themselves as Native American without any evidence that that's the case. When realistically, we have census documents. We have attempts at getting recognition. We have the 1941 Susquehannock Indian Reservation Bill, which was passed unopposed in the state of Pennsylvania and then vetoed by the governor. So, I think that's one of the biggest myths, particularly for Pennsylvania, is this idea that, if you have a family history of being Native, it's okay to identify that way or to take opportunities for Native people because there are no records that would confirm that anyways. And that's just factually untrue. I think another big one that kind of goes hand in hand with that is this idea that anybody who has a long established family history in the United States has a Native American ancestor back there somewhere. And the truth of the matter is, colonial era intermarriage is an extremely rare event. It did happen, and there are documented cases. But the idea that, it's okay for me to speak on this controversial issue and say that I'm Native American, this is my perspective on it because I have a, 10th great grandmother or something like that I'm sure somewhere back there somebody was Native, right? As opposed to, being a person who's a member of a tribal community who has this modern lived experience of connecting to that heritage. And even in cases where there's a distant intermarriage that's documented, that's not the same thing as just the assumption that because my ancestors have been here a long time, I surely have somebody back there somewhere. And I encourage people to do the work. If you believe you have a distant ancestor who was Native, find out, answer that question with facts and documents and, research. And where applicable, become reconnected to your tribe, learn more about that. But, to just assume that anybody who has this kind of history, we're all a little bit that kind of attitude is just really, it's inappropriate and it crosses over because it allows people to discount the experiences of modern natives by claiming that they would be just as Native, as this person, when that's just not accurate.
How can we ensure that the Conestoga Susquehannock people, that their story continues to be told accurately and respectfully?
And I think there's a couple of pieces to this. I think first and foremost, I think it's important to recognize that the community has the ultimate say on tribal affairs and tribal issues, and that, while lots of people identify as Conestoga Susquehannock without having a tribal affiliation and without having any meaningful documentation of that connection, it's really, really, really important to recognize the authority of our tribe in making those decisions and talking about these issues. I think it's really important to have an open mind and open ears when we're explaining what's happening or our history when we put these documents out there. I think it is absolutely crucial for people to keep an open mind and really think about why they've made the assumptions they've made about our people and why they believe that we are extinct or why they believe that we shouldn't have access to our land anymore. All of these different things. And, to share that story with an open heart and an open mind. think about it in terms of what it is like to be a member of a tribe today that can document its history over 175 years of seeking the return of our treaty land, and to be denied the legal right to call ourselves Native Americans in many, many contexts. We can't call our businesses Native owned. We can't call our art Native made. All of these things come together, and to really think about and educate yourself on why it's so important that there be a tribal authority to handle, issues and claims of Conestoga Susquehannock identity, and why it's important that there remains, a distinct tribal body to handle these issues. And I really, really invite people to learn our language and learn our culture and learn, the things that we're putting out there in terms of our history. We have the free tribal history course on the website that I push every time I get the chance, because it really does. It walks you through kind of the whole story about why it's so problematic to continually insist that there are no Conestoga Susquehannock people, that the Conestoga Susquehannock tribe is not legitimate or hasn't been, distinct as a political unit, when it very much has, and we can back that up.
Well, we appreciate you so much for being here.
Okay, I thought that was interesting. Let me know your guys' opinion down in the comment section, what you guys think. I tried to split it up in 2 parts, that way it's not so long. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. Peace out.